My name's Brandon and this is Cartoon Network Video Game History, a show where I take a look back on all of the video games based on Cartoon Network shows and retrospectively review them. I'm breaking my no mobile or flash games rule again. Sue me. Steven Universe Attack the Light was a fantastic game, and while I wasn't a big fan of Pocket Mortys, it was at least kind of interesting because it was a parody of Pokemon. Hopefully I'm unearthing another hidden gem this week as I review Steven Universe The Phantom Fable. Released just last year on the 18th of April for iOS and Android platforms, The Phantom Fable has truly been buried, even more so than the other Steven Universe mobile games. If you search Steven Universe on the App Store, it is the 10th option to come up. This seems insane to me, considering this is a full-fledged game that actually has a price tag attached to it. Instead, you get a bunch of free-to-play games, the 2 Light Trilogy mobile games, and even some unrelated entries and unlicensed apps before Phantom Fable comes up. With SEO like that, it's no wonder most people have never heard of it. The developers here are Sleep Ninja Games, a studio who I have never heard of before, and a studio that doesn't even have their own official website. The only other titles I could find that were developed by them were Monster 8 My Birthday Cake and Clarence 30 Days and 7 Seas. Since releasing The Phantom Fable, they haven't put out anything else, although they apparently own the studio Moonlight Kids, who are developing a game called The Wild at Heart. There's already so much mystery surrounding this game. It blows my mind that there are still times where recent developers and games have less concrete information available than a Cartoon Network game made 20 years ago. Adding to the mystery of this game is the fact that there isn't even a listing for this game on Metacritic. There are a bunch of listings for random, free, Flash-style Steven Universe games, but The Phantom Fable is nowhere to be found. Because of this, I had to do a little bit more digging for reviews. I found that the game got mostly middling reviews, sitting around the 5 to 6 out of 10 mark. Looking at App Store reviews also shows a pretty similar story. The average score hovers between a 3 to 3.5 out of 5. What's most concerning is that amongst the recent reviews, there is a lot of talk about game-breaking bugs. The reviews that mention these are from 2020, so clearly these bugs have persisted until well over a year after release, not exactly filling me with confidence. I have literally no idea what I'm getting myself into here. I'm pretty much only reviewing this because it had a price tag attached to it, and Attack the Light was so fantastic. Am I making a big mistake here? But before we discover what's in store with Steven Universe The Phantom Fable, you better make sure you're subscribed. Next week is going to be huge. I'm going to be doing something never done before on this channel. I'm going to be reviewing a brand new game. Samurai Jack Battle Through Time is dropping on August 21, and I'm going to be pumping out a review of that as soon as I can. To make sure you catch that monumentous review, you need to be subscribed. But now, on with the review. Thank God The Phantom Fable turned out to be a legit game. Not sure what I would have done if I spent $5 on this app only for it to be a glorified Flash game. One thing that did annoy me was the fact that there are ads in this game, despite it being a paid game. The only ad I encountered in my time was one upon booting it up, and even then it was an ad for Unleash the Light, which really isn't too bad. However, I think it's pretty shitty to include ads in a game you have to pay for, even if the ads are minimal and it's only advertising other Steven Universe games. The setup for The Phantom Fable is pretty typical for Steven Universe, but nevertheless, it's still interesting. Lion vomits up a mysterious book, which, when opened by Steven, the crystal gems are sucked into it. Not knowing what to do, Steven and Connie run to Lapis and Peridot for help, quickly learning that the book is a powerful tool that Homeworld gems used to use. It also happens that the pages that each of the gems were sucked into have been scattered. So, with all this chaos at hand, it's up to Steven and Connie to track down the missing pages in Beach City and then jump into the book to save Garnet, Amethyst, and Pearl. I think the story and overall presentation are the aspects I like most about The Phantom Fable. Like the Light Trilogy games, the narrative here feels important. It's so obvious that Rebecca Sugar really respects video games as a medium and was happy to tell canon stories through them. Sure, none of the stories are all that pivotal to the story being told in the show, but you always get great little tidbits that expand the world and characters' backstories. Specifically, in Phantom Fable, we get to learn even more about Steven's mother. The book that causes so much trouble is revealed to have been something that Rose and Pearl tracked down after the Homeworld gems fled, and despite Rose promising Pearl she would get rid of it, she clearly kept it despite knowing its destructive powers. Again, it's nothing world-changing, but it's an intriguing story that offers way more than most Cartoon Network games. And as I said, the overall presentation of the game is quite stellar too. I was genuinely caught off guard that dialogue is partially voice acted. Not every line is voice acted, and some lines are only partially voice acted, but it's so much more than I was expecting. Something like this just adds to the feeling of Phantom Fable being more than a throwaway mobile game. The soundtrack is great too, as to be expected at this point. It's so calm and peaceful, it's definitely something you could throw on and just chill out to. Visually, the game was never going to knock anyone's socks off. I think it's a solid effort, and while Attack the Light's style is infinitely better in my opinion, I really can't complain about what was cooked up here. The one major issue I had here was with Greg's character model. I don't know if it's just me, but I thought he looked strange as hell here. His proportions just feel slightly off model, and it's giving me a very weird vibe. Gameplay wise, the Phantom Fable is totally unique, both for Steven Universe and Cartoon Network as a whole. While Attack the Light obviously does utilise touchscreen controls, being a mobile game and all, it's still relatively traditional. You're mostly just tapping on buttons to select things, and the same goes for Pocket Mortys. Here though, touch controls are far more complex. As you jump into each page of the book, you'll be tasked with solving puzzles and thwarting enemies. To move around levels, you tap on a space on the screen, and Steven's crew will immediately run to that spot. It seems pretty simple at first glance, but I found it pretty clunky and frustrating. When you encounter enemies, things are again kept basic. To make Connie and Steven unleash their powers on foes, you just need to swipe across them. This is the entire extent of the combat. It's just constant swiping, and it never changes even slightly. Sure, once you enter a new page of the book, you gain access to a new crystal gem, each of which comes with their own unique attack that is activated in a slightly different manner. For example, to use Pearl's spear as an attack, you need to do a two-fingered swipe. This changes things ever so slightly, while also introducing a new set of issues. I found that many of the gestures used were clunky to pull off. Particularly with Pearl, swiping with two fingers just felt unnatural a lot of the time. Once enemies are defeated, you're required to bubble them so they don't regenerate, just like in the show. It's a really neat addition to make the gameplay experience feel more like an adventure you'd see on TV. To bubble an enemy, you draw a circle around it on the screen, which majorly reminded me of Pokemon Ranger. In fact, there is so much on-screen drawing in Phantom Fable that I was constantly thinking of Pokemon Ranger and Nintendo DS games in general. Each gem you unlock has some sort of ability that can be used to solve puzzles and remove roadblocks. I already mentioned Pearl's spear, which can activate faraway switches, but there's also Amethyst who can move large blocks. To do this, you have to draw a very simple pattern on the screen. Despite the pattern being ridiculously simple, it can be a huge pain in the ass to actually do. It always felt like the game wants you to be pixel perfect. It's not good enough to be slightly off, you need to draw that damn thing exactly how it is in the tutorial. This leads to many frustrating moments where you're sitting there just fighting against the game's controls. It's not a pleasant experience. Overall, the gameplay feels like it's entirely about the puzzles. Sure, every few screens the game will throw a handful of enemies at you, and the game does have boss battles, but it seemed obvious to me that Sleep Ninja were more concerned with making a puzzle game. I think this is also supported by the fact that Phantom Fable gets mildly more interesting once you gain access to more of the gems. Solving puzzles with a combination of powers from Pearl, Amethyst, and Steven gives it a good kick in the backside, and it almost feels like it gets into gear. But at the end of the day, the Phantom Fable has one major persisting problem. It's too clunky. Everything in this game is clunky when it comes to gameplay. There is seriously not a single aspect that feels smooth or completely satisfying. Moving around the screen is clunky, fighting enemies is clunky, solving puzzles is clunky, the boss battles are clunky. The game almost feels like it's going to find its footing and fall into rhythm, but then you're immediately disrupted with more clunkiness. It's like Sleep Ninja constantly comes tantalizingly close to developing the right formula before falling over the last hurdle. Not once did the on-screen action feel natural. And quite frankly, the combat is straight up garbage, and it's baffling that they make it such a big part. While I did say that puzzles feel like the main focus, combat becomes more and more prevalent alongside it as you progress. This wouldn't be an issue if you had a great combat system in place, but that's not the case for Phantom Fable. The combat issues are spotlighted particularly as action segments become faster paced, with more and more stronger enemies being introduced. The swiping and gesture-based moves are not smooth enough to deal with fighting like this. It's not really a system that is conducive to Twitch-based combat. Maybe I just suck, but enemy encounters were always a drag. I eventually settled on a cheesy way to deal with them by sending Pearl out ahead of everyone and just spamming the spear. Even doing that felt clunky though. Most of the time I would end up losing at least a little bit of health in every encounter, which was a massive problem seeing as health pickups are insanely rare. I encountered maybe 3 health pickups in my playthrough. To rub salt into the wound, the low health sound effect is nails on a chalkboard levels of annoying. People used to complain about the low health sound in Pokemon, but in comparison, that sounds like the most beautiful piece of music ever written. Your health is displayed prominently in the top left corner of the screen, so I have no idea why they needed to make an annoying sound like this. I feel like I need to make a confession here. I didn't play the Phantom Fable right through to the end. During Amethyst's stage, I came to an enemy encounter that was just kicking my ass over and over again. These little annoying as fuck robots just wouldn't die no matter what I did. I realised I was having an awful time with the game and no good would come from forcing myself to slog through it, so I stopped right there. I usually try my best to finish every game I review, but sometimes enough is enough. I put 2 hours into, as far as I can tell, a roughly 4-hour game, so I think it's safe to say the final 2 hours wouldn't have won me over. The constant clunkiness just quickly wore me down to the point where I had zero motivation to finish it. Even recent awful games I've reviewed like Battle Crashes and Pirates of the Enchiridion had enough to keep me playing, and both of those titles were around the same length as this. However, there was nothing that kept a spark of interest alive here. I wanted to see where the story was going, but it's not that fascinating or well written for me to completely put aside all of the other issues. Steven Universe The Phantom Fable is a good example of why I've made the choice to mostly ignore Flash and mobile games, and why I'm probably going to not review any more in the future, except for Unleash the Light of course. Personally, I think phones are the absolute worst way to play video games. They're just not set up in a way to make the majority of video game genres play well. Yeah, you've got stuff like visual novels, endless runners, and even turn-based RPGs that can work pretty well, but almost every other genre on the platform feels like the developers are trying to put a square peg in a round hole. By the end of my 2 hours with the Phantom Fable, I was seething. I absolutely hated this game. Despite the majority of Cartoon Network games being certified trash, I rarely say this, but I regretted playing this game. I'll acknowledge that Sleep Ninja put a fair bit of effort into this game, and as I said at the start of the review, I love a lot of the presentation. But playing this was a nightmare. I'm extremely glad that it's over with. Next time is the review we've all been waiting for. The first Cartoon Network game since Unleash the Light in 2019 is being released. It's time to review Samurai Jack: Battle Through Time. This game couldn't be releasing at a better time too, as I've got an absolute appetite for some samurai action at the moment. I just platinumed Ghost of Tsushima, which I enjoyed so much that I've started working my way through Akira Kurosawa's filmography. It seems like a whole lot of time and effort has been put into it, and the fact that they've been marketing the game so heavily through outlets like IGN shows a bit of promise. Unfortunately, I was hoping to get a review copy so I could get a review out to my dedicated fans on launch day, but as of making this video, it doesn't look like that will happen. Despite that, I'm still going to try and get a review up as quickly as possible. Depending on how long the game is, I might even be able to get the review up at the same Monday/Sunday time slot that I usually upload my videos in. To make sure you catch the Battle Through Time review as soon as it drops, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications.